You know when you watch a news report, or see an ad, or even just scroll through your social media feed, what's really going on? You probably think you're just getting information, right? But it is so much more complex than that. Today, we're going to dive into a theory that totally revolutionized how we understand media. A theory that says every single message is a potential battleground for meaning. Let's get into it. For the longest time, the theory of communication was, well, pretty simple. Researchers imagined it as a totally linear, one-way street. You've got a sender who makes a message, and then they just transmit it in a straight line to a receiver. That's it. This model basically treated the audience as passive, kind of like a sponge just soaking up whatever it's given. It was simple, sure, but it was missing the most interesting part of the whole story. And then Stuart Hall came along. He looked at that simple straight line and said, hold on, that's not how this works at all. He dropped a revolutionary idea on the world. Communication isn't a line, it's a dynamic circuit. It's this constant active process where producers encode a message with their ideas and we, the audience, decode it based on our own experiences and beliefs. This slide right here, it perfectly captures that massive shift in thinking he started.
So, to really get this revolution, you have to understand the man who started it.
Stuart Hall was, to put it lightly, an absolute giant of intellectual thought. Born in Jamaica, his experience as an immigrant in Britain powerfully shaped his work, earning him the nickname the Godfather of Multiculturalism. As a founding figure, and later the director of the legendary Birmingham Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies, he wasn't just some academic in an ivory tower. No, he was building a whole new way of looking at the world. One that dug deep into the connections between media, ideology, and the very real structures of race and class. His whole project was driven by asking who gets to tell the stories and whose reality gets to be seen as normal. So how exactly did Hall redraw the map of communication? Well, he gave us this brilliant four-phase circuit that lays out the entire life cycle of any media message. Hall called this whole process a complex structure in dominance. I know, it sounds a little academic, but what does it actually mean? It means communication isn't a perfectly balanced, neutral loop. It's got four distinct phases, and while they're all linked, they are not created equal. For instance, the people producing the media, they usually have way more power to shape the initial message than the audience has, so some phases can actually dominate the others.
So what are these four steps? Well, it all starts with production, which is also called encoding. This is where a media producer, like a news channel or an ad agency, creates a message and basically bakes their own values and worldview right into it. Then comes circulation. That's just how the message gets out there, whether it's on TV, in a magazine, or as a viral meme on social media. Next up, consumption, or decoding. This is our part. This is where we, the audience, make sense of it. And finally, reproduction. This is what we do with that meaning. Do we share it, argue about it, or maybe even protest because of it?
Now here's where things get really interesting. This idea on this slide, it gives an enormous amount of power to us, the audience. According to Hall, a message has absolutely zero social or political effect unless we understand it and then apply it in some way. This just completely shreds that old idea of a passive audience. In Hall's model, we're not just sponges. We are active, powerful creators of meaning. The circuit literally cannot be completed without us.
Okay, so if the audience is so powerful, how do we actually do it? How do we read or interpret a message? Well, Hall argued there are three main ways we can go about it. He called them the dominant hegemonic, the negotiated, and the oppositional reading positions. And really, each one just represents a different relationship between our own worldview and the worldview that's been encoded into the message we're seeing. First up is the dominant reading. This is basically when you decode the message exactly the way the producer hoped you would. You see that ad for a luxury SUV and you think, yep, that's success, that's freedom. This happens when your own values just happen to line up perfectly with the ideology that's baked into the message. It's the path of least resistance, and it pretty much reinforces the way things already are.
Next, we have the negotiated reading. And honestly, this is probably where most of us live most of the time. It's where you get the main message, but you kind of filter it through your own life. You might watch a news report that's celebrating economic growth, and you think, okay, that's generally a good thing. But then you also think, but it's ignoring the fact that my rent is going up and my paycheck isn't. You see? It's a mix of agreement and a little bit of critique.
And finally, there's the oppositional reading. This is when you understand the intended meaning perfectly, and you completely, totally reject it. You see a film that's clearly designed to make you afraid of immigration, but instead of feeling fear, you see it as xenophobic propaganda. You're taking the producer's intended message and you're flipping it on its head, reinterpreting it through a totally different counter-ideological framework. This is an act of active resistance. So these different readings show us something absolutely crucial. Meaning is not fixed, it's not set in stone, it's a site of struggle. And that brings us to the hidden forces that are shaping this entire process behind the scenes.
To really get this struggle, we need to note two key terms: denotation and connotation. Denotation is just the literal dictionary definition of a thing. A sweater denotes a piece of clothing you wear to stay warm. Simple enough. But connotation, that's where all the ideology lives. It's the associated meaning. So depending on the ad, that same sweater could connote comfort or high fashion or a cozy romance. Media producers are always working on the connotative level to shape how we feel.
Now, when misunderstandings happen, when a negotiated or an oppositional reading takes place, it's not random. Hall argued it's because of a fundamental asymmetry between producers and audiences. Differences in power, social position, culture, all of this creates what he called systematically distorted communication. The message isn't just getting lost in translation, it's being actively reinterpreted because of very real structural differences in people's lives.
So, the bottom line is this: the ongoing battle over which meanings get to be seen as the dominant ones is fundamentally political. Hall gave it a name: the politics of signification. It's this constant, often invisible struggle to make one particular interpretation of the world feel like the only natural or common sense one.
Look, Hall wrote his big essay on this way back in 1973. But in our completely oversaturated media world of today, his ideas are more relevant than they have ever been. So let's pull it all together and go over the key takeaways.
All right, so what are the big things to remember from all this? First, communication is a dynamic circuit, not a simple one-way street. Second, audiences are active and powerful. We're not passive sponges. Third, we decode messages from one of three positions: dominant, negotiated, or oppositional. Fourth, meaning itself is a battlefield, the politics of signification. And finally, and maybe most importantly, no media message is ever neutral. It is always encoded with a point of view.
And that leaves us with one final thought. Stuart Hall gave us the tools to become more critical, more aware media consumers. He empowered all of us to look beneath the surface. So the next time you watch a movie, see a news clip, or just scroll through TikTok, ask yourself, what was the intended message here? And more importantly, from which position am I decoding it?